I still remember the way the candles flickered that night. 18 tiny flames dancing on a white cake that smelled like vanilla and lies. My mom. No, the woman I had called Mom. My entire life stood across the table with that practiced smile, while my dad held up his phone, pretending to record a memory worth keeping. "Make a wish, Alara," she said. I looked at them both, feeling something hollow in my chest. Because behind their eyes, something was off. Their smiles were stiff, their voices too calm. And for the first time in my life, I realized this wasn't a celebration. It was an ending. I blew out the candles. Everyone clapped, just the two of them. No friends, no relatives, no balloons, no gifts. Just a quiet house that felt suddenly too clean, too prepared. When I looked around, I noticed something odd, a suitcase by the door. "My suitcase?" Dad cleared his throat. "Alara, sweetheart, can you sit down for a second?" His tone was careful, like he was walking across glass. My heart began to race. Mom sat beside him, folding her hands. I sat opposite them, still wearing the cheap paper birthday hat she'd made me wear like a joke. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mom took a deep breath. "Alara," she said, her voice soft but cold underneath. "There's something we've been meaning to tell you, and we think it's time." I frowned. "Okay." Dad looked down at the table. "We're not your biological parents." The words hit harder than any slap could have. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" Mom gave a sad smile. "We adopted you when you were a baby. You were left at a small church in Montana. We brought you home, raised you, gave you everything we could." My ears were ringing. The air around me felt heavy, too hot. I tried to speak, but all that came out was, "Why? Why are you telling me this now?" She didn't answer. Instead, Dad leaned back and said, "Because you're 18 now. We've done our part. You're officially an adult." I blinked, unsure what he meant, until he nodded toward the door. "That suitcase. You'll need to start figuring things out for yourself." He said calmly, "We've packed your things. There's some cash in the envelope inside. It's time for you to move out." My jaw dropped. You're kicking me out on my birthday." Mom crossed her arms. "It's not like that, Alara. We just think you need to learn to be independent. Besides, this was always the plan. We raised you until you were of age." I felt my throat tighten. "The plan?" Dad looked at me expressionless. "We never intended to keep you forever. We gave you a roof, an education, and food. That's more than enough." My vision blurred, so that's it. I was just, what, a project to you? They didn't answer. Instead, Mom slid the suitcase closer. "You should go tonight. There's a bus station 2 blocks down. The cash should cover a ticket." For a long moment, I just stared at them. I'd always thought love was permanent. That family meant forever. But in that moment, I realized something I wish I'd learned earlier. Sometimes love is conditional, and those conditions expire the moment you're no longer useful. I stood up slowly. "You knew this day was coming, didn't you?" Mom looked down. "Yes. And you never thought to warn me." "No." My chest ached, but my tears wouldn't come. Maybe because part of me had always known. The distance, the way they talked to me like a stranger, the fact that I'd never seen baby pictures, never met relatives, never been hugged for no reason. It all made sense now. Dad stood up and extended a hand, as if to make it formal. "Good luck, Alara." I didn't take it. I just stared at him. The man who'd taught me how to ride a bike, who used to tuck me in at night. I couldn't even recognize him anymore. Then I looked at Mom. "You really think this is how life works, that you can just get rid of me like a rental car?" She sighed. "We did our job, Alara. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I grabbed the suitcase. My fingers trembled as I zipped it open, just to see what they'd packed. A few shirts, some jeans, and a crumpled envelope on top. I opened it $120 in cash and a folded note. It said, "Be grateful, not everyone gets 18 years." I let out a shaky laugh. "Wow," I whispered, "even your cruelty comes with a message." Then I stood up, took the suitcase, and walked toward the door. But as I reached for the handle, I stopped. A strange calm washed over me. I turned back to them and smiled. A smile so quiet it scared even me. "You know what's funny?" I said softly. "You think you're done with me, but you're not." Dad frowned. "What does that mean?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just, I'll see you around." And I walked out into the cold night with nothing but a suitcase, $120, and the kind of heartbreak that can either destroy a person or turn them into something unstoppable. The wind bit through my jacket as I reached the end of the driveway. Their house stood behind me, glowing warm and bright, like a picture from a life I never really had. I looked back once, not because I missed it, but because I wanted to remember this feeling. The exact moment I stopped belonging to anyone but myself. The bus station was nearly empty. I sat on a hard plastic bench, clutching my suitcase, watching the schedule board flicker. Every town name looked meaningless, until I saw one that made me pause. Ravendale, something about it tugged at me. It wasn't far, maybe an hour away. I couldn't explain it, but something deep in my chest told me that was where I needed to go. I bought the ticket, boarded the bus, and pressed my forehead against the window as the city lights faded behind me. Somewhere along the way, I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, the sun was rising, painting the sky gold. The bus rolled into a small town surrounded by pine trees and quiet roads. Ravendale. I stepped off the bus, the morning chill hitting my face. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw it. A small church at the corner of Main and Willow. The same name Mom had said the night before. A small church in Montana. My pulse quickened. I walked toward it, my suitcase bumping behind me. The front door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled like dust and candle wax. At the back, there was an old donation box, and beside it, a bulletin board with faded photos and notes. One caught my eye. A yellowed newspaper clipping from 2006. The headline read, "Infant found at church steps, police searching for biological parents." Below it was a photograph of a baby wrapped in a pink blanket, with a silver bracelet on her wrist. I froze. Because I still had that bracelet. The caption below the photo said, "Baby girl found at St. Agatha's Church, Ravendale, MT. No leads yet." My hands trembled as I traced the letters, and then, just below it, someone had written in pen, "If found, please contact Rev. Thomas Hale." I turned toward the altar. There was an old man kneeling in prayer, white-haired and frail. When he turned, his eyes widened. He looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost. "Alara," he whispered. My breath caught in my throat. "How do you know my name?" He smiled weakly. "Because, child, I was there the night you were left on those steps." The old man's voice trembled as he spoke my name, Alara. No one had ever said it like that before, soft, reverent, like it actually meant something. I took a hesitant step forward. You knew me from before." He nodded slowly. "Yes, I remember the night as if it were yesterday. It was snowing, the kind of storm that makes even angels hide. I heard a knock at the church door, and when I opened it, there you were. Just a few hours old, wrapped in a pink blanket, with that silver bracelet on your wrist." My fingers went to the bracelet instinctively. The tiny heart charms still glinted faintly under the church light. Did you ever find out who left me there?" He sighed, his eyes heavy with memory. "No one ever came forward, but there were clues, things I never told anyone because I didn't trust what I saw." I frowned. "What kind of things?" He gestured for me to sit. The wooden pew creaked under me as he walked to a small box behind the altar and unlocked it with an old brass key. From inside, he pulled out a sealed envelope yellowed with age, corners soft and frayed. "This was left with you," he said. "I've kept it safe all these years, waiting for the day you might return." I stared at it. My name Alara was written in faded blue ink. I reached for it with trembling hands. "Can I open it?" He smiled sadly. "It's yours." The paper was fragile, the seal half, broken from time. I unfolded it carefully. Inside was a letter written in neat, elegant handwriting. "My dearest Alara, if you are reading this, it means fate has brought you back to where you began. I cannot tell you who I am not yet because it would endanger you. There are people who would do anything to find you because of what you carry. You are the rightful heir to something precious, hidden under the stars that watched over your birth. One day, when the time is right, follow the trail of the silver heart. It will lead you home. Love, M." I read the words over and over, my hands shaking. Rightful heir, what does that even mean? The priest looked at me thoughtfully. "I don't know who wrote that letter, but I've always believed it was your mother, and I believe she was in danger." "Danger from who?" He shook his head. There were rumors back then a wealthy family in the region. The Monroes, they owned almost everything here. But one night, their entire estate burned down. The couple vanished, and there were whispers that their newborn child had been hidden away to keep her safe. My breath caught. Their newborn, you mean? He nodded slowly. Yes, I believe you might be that child. I sat there frozen, the truth slowly settling over me like falling ash. But that's impossible. The people who raised me may have known. He interrupted gently. Or perhaps they were paid to take you, to keep you quiet, hidden. My stomach turned. Suddenly, all the cold stares, all the distance, all the things that never made sense, they weren't just cruelty. They were control, I whispered, so my whole life. I was never supposed to find out. He placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. Sometimes the people who fear you most are the ones who know who you truly are. For a long time, I sat in silence, the letter clutched in my hand. Then I asked, you said something about under the stars. What does that mean? The old man smiled faintly. There's a field just outside Ravendale. Locals call it Starfall Hill. On clear nights, the sky there looks like it's raining light. Maybe that's where your trail begins. Something inside me stirred a strange, electric certainty. Then I'll go there, I said quietly. He hesitated. Be careful, child. If this is truly what I think it is, others might be looking for it too. I nodded. I've been alone before, I'll manage. Before leaving, I turned to him. Thank you for keeping this. He smiled. No thanks needed. Just promise me one thing, whatever you find. Use it to build a life you deserve. I stepped out of the church into the golden afternoon light. The air felt alive, humming with something new, destiny maybe. The suitcase felt lighter now, as if it carried more hope than loss. As I walked toward the outskirts of town, I thought about that letter again. Follow the trail of the silver heart. I pulled off my bracelet and turned it over in my palm. For the first time, I noticed something etched on the back of the charm, a tiny engraving, barely visible. It said SH07 degrees and /1, 114 degrees W coordinates. I stopped walking, heart pounding. Whoever had left me here had marked my path. I borrowed a map from a local gas station and traced the coordinates with my finger. My breath caught when I saw where they led not far, just a few miles north of Ravendale. The place was labeled Monroe Estate Ruins. My pulse quickened. The Monroe name again. That night, I rented a cheap flashlight from a store and set out on foot. The moonlight painted the road silver as I followed the forest trail toward the old ruins. The trees whispered overhead, and every sound made my heart race. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw a crumbling stone gate covered in ivy. Beyond it stood the remains of what had once been a grand mansion. The windows were shattered, the walls blackened by fire. Nature had started to reclaim it, but the air still felt heavy with secrets. I stepped inside carefully, the flashlight beams slicing through the dust. The floorboards creaked under my weight. I searched every room until I found a hidden staircase beneath the burnt remains of a piano. It led to a cellar. The air was cold and dry. My light flickered as I walked deeper, and then I saw a metal chest, old but intact. The same heart symbol engraved on the lid as my bracelet. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were piles of sealed envelopes, old photographs, and one large black binder labeled Project E.M. The first page made my breath stop. Inheritance Agreement Monroe Legacy Trust. Beneficiary Alara Monroe. Trust value $27,000,000 USD condition. Trust remains sealed until beneficiary's 18th birthday. My knees almost gave out. $27 million. All this time while my parents had treated me like a burden. I had been the heir to a fortune they probably knew about. And suddenly it all made sense. Why they'd kept me hidden. Why they wanted me gone at 18. Because that's when the inheritance would activate. I clutched the binder to my chest, tears finally breaking free. But these weren't tears of sorrow anymore. They were something else. Fire. Because now I knew the truth and I knew exactly what to do next. I'd go back, I'd face them, and I'd show them just what it meant to underestimate the girl they'd thrown away. When I left the ruins, dawn was breaking again. The first rays of sunlight hit the charred walls, and for a moment, I imagined my real parents standing there proud, smiling, telling me to keep walking. And I whispered to the wind, I found it. I found what you left for me. The wind seemed to answer, brushing through my hair like a blessing. By the time I reached the main road, I wasn't Alara, the unwanted orphan, anymore. I was Alara Monroe, heir, survivor, and storm in human form, and my next step, revenge not out of hate, but out of justice, because sometimes the best way to answer betrayal is to let your success be the loudest thunder they'll ever hear. The drive back to the city felt longer than usual, though the road stretched endlessly beneath a wide silver sky. Every passing mile carried a weight of memory the night they threw me out, the smirk on my adoptive mother's lips, the hollow sound of the door closing behind me. I had left as an unwanted girl. I was returning as a woman with power pulsing in her veins. The inheritance papers rested on the passenger seat beside me, each one a reminder that the truth couldn't stay buried forever. When I reached the neighborhood, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. Their house sat quietly at the end of the lane, perfect and fake, just like the people inside it. The manicured garden, the new car, the same wind chimes that had once sounded so comforting it, was all still there, untouched, as if the world hadn't moved on since the day they discarded me. I stepped out, heels crunching against the gravel. My reflection stared back at me in the polished windowcom, steady, untouchable. I knocked once. When the door opened, my mother's face froze. Her robe slipped slightly off her shoulder, her mascara faintly smudged. "Alara," she whispered like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled. No, not Alara Lawson. It's Alara Monroe now. Behind her, my adoptive father appeared, his expression twisted with confusion and irritation. "What the hell are you doing here?" he barked. "We told you to move out." I took a slow step inside, my gaze sweeping over the living room that used to be mine, the photos on the mantel, all of them showing my sister, none of me. The irony almost made me laugh. "Relax," I said softly. "I just came to return something." My mother's voice trembled. "Return what?" I placed the thick binder, the Monroe Trust documents, on the table between us. It landed with a heavy thud, echoing through the room like a verdict. "The truth," I said. They exchanged a glance, that same silent, secretive look they always shared when they were hiding something. My father folded his arms. "You're not making any sense." I leaned against the chair, my voice calm but sharp as glass. "I found the church where you left me, the letter, the coordinates, the Monroe estate. I found everything you tried to bury, including the trust fund that unlocked on my 18th birthday. Their faces changed fear, guilt, disbelief, all flickering together like a storm. My mother sat down slowly, her hands trembling. You weren't supposed to find out, clearly," I said, "but I did, and now we need to talk about what happens next." My father sneered. "Oh, I know what happens next. You hand that over. That money doesn't belong to you. We raised you, fed you, gave you a home, gave me a home." I cut in sharply. "You gave me a room without love, meals laced with silence, and a family portrait where I didn't exist. You didn't raise me, you contained me. You kept me hidden until the clock ran out, until that trust fund matured, until you could throw me away without witnesses." My mother's voice cracked. "We did what we had to. We had bills, your sister's college, your father's business." I laughed. "And you used my inheritance to pay for it, didn't you?" They said nothing. The silence was answer enough. I opened the binder, flipping to the notarized pages. "See this, Monroe Legacy Trust, signed and sealed by Charles and Evelyn Monroe. Total value, $27 million. Beneficiary, Alara Monroe, the same name engraved on this bracelet." I held up my wrist, the silver heart glinting under the light. "I thought it was just jewelry, turns out it's proof." My father's mask cracked, rage leaking through. "You're lying. You forged those papers. Really?" I said, sliding a second document toward him. "This is the original birth certificate, retrieved from Monroe County records. I already had it verified by a court. And by the way, the trust was never legally transferred. You've been living off stolen assets." The room went silent again. My mother's breathing grew shallow. My father's face turned red, his hands trembling slightly. You're bluffing. I smiled faintly. Am I? Because yesterday I had my attorney file for property reclamation. This house, the one you're sitting in, was purchased using my trust's funds. That makes it mine. Her teacup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Alara, please, she whispered. Don't do this. We're family. I took a step closer. No, you're not. You're the reason I never knew what family really meant. The doorbell rang. My father frowned, but I knew exactly who it was. My lawyer, Mr. Harlan, stepped in with a quiet authority that filled the space. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson. He said, handing them an envelope. You are hereby served with notice of property repossession and financial investigation. Effective immediately. My father grabbed the papers and tore them open, scanning the lines with trembling hands. His voice broke. You can't do this to us. I tilted my head. You did it to yourselves. You took what wasn't yours. I'm just correcting the balance. He slammed his fist against the table. You ungrateful, stop. I said, my voice slicing through his words like a blade. Don't ever use that word again. I'm not ungrateful. I'm done being your victim. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Mr. Harlan nodded once at me and quietly stepped outside, giving me the moment I needed. My mother sobbed quietly, her voice shaking. We loved you in our own way. In your own way. I repeated, you loved what you thought you could control. You loved the idea of a quiet girl who wouldn't ask questions. The kind of daughter who'd stay small so you could feel big. She covered her face, her tears soaking through her fingers. My father just stood there, his anger deflating into something smaller, shame or maybe realization. I didn't care which. I turned toward the door, then paused. By the way, I said softly, you might want to check your bank accounts. The funds from my trust are being pulled back. The investigators will ask where you got your cars, your vacations, your new pool. And if you're wondering how they'll know, I sent them the records myself. My father's mouth opened, but no words came. My mother whispered something almost inaudible. What will you do now? I smiled faintly. I'll build something better, something honest. Outside, the air felt lighter, cleaner. I could still hear their muffled voices behind me. The sound of two people realizing that the empire they built on deceit was collapsing. For a brief moment, I felt pity, but then I remembered every night I cried alone, wondering what I'd done wrong to deserve their indifference. No, pity wasn't what they earned. Closure was. In the following months, I took full legal control of the Monroe Trust. I used part of it to rebuild the old estate into something meaningful, the Monroe Foundation for Youth. It became a home for children who, like me, had been forgotten or discarded. Each room I restored was like rewriting a piece of my childhood: bright walls, open windows, laughter where silence used to live. I worked tirelessly, surrounded by people who believed in what I was doing. Journalists wrote about the story of the lost Monroe, aired the girl who turned pain into purpose. At first, the attention scared me. Then I realized it was power. Power not to hurt, but to heal. A year later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a letter, short, elegant, written in the same script as the one I found at the church. My dearest Alara, you've done what I always hoped you would. You've turned loss into light. You've carried our name not with greed, but with grace. Wherever I am proud of you. Love, M. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they weren't heavy. They were soft like release. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a glass frame on my desk, next to the bracelet that started it all. Some nights I'd sit outside the foundation's balcony, the city lights stretching far and wide beneath the same stars that once watched me cry. I used to think revenge meant destroying the people who hurt you, but as I watched the children playing below laughing, alive, I realized revenge wasn't destruction at all. It was creation. It was proving that no one could define your worth except you. One evening, as I was locking up, a little girl named Ava tugged on my sleeve. Miss Monroe, she said shyly, is it true you used to have no family? I smiled and knelt beside her. Yes, I said softly. But then I learned something. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when everyone else walks away. She smiled, small and innocent. Then you're my family now. My heart swelled. Yes, sweetheart, I guess I am. That night, when I finally went home, my real home, the one I built myself, I stood on the balcony, looked up at the stars, and whispered, "I'm not that girl anymore." The wind seemed to carry a soft reply, almost like a voice. You never were. You just forgot. And as the city lights flickered below, I felt peace settle and my chest steady, quiet, final. The girl they abandoned had become a woman they could never touch. The secret they tried to bury had become the story that defined me. And the legacy they stole had become my weapon, my redemption, my retaliation.